In the middle of the night at 3 o'clock, we arrive with a big truck and we install just right to the next to the water a hyperreal statue of a beached whale. It's 50 meters long. We make it smell. We put a fence around it, as is the habit with beached whales. We put on uniforms of scientists, I mean protective suits, and we basically start investigating it. So we had some aggression. You do it on the street, so there's all kind of people. I mean, also the crazy ones, all the mentally unstable ones, also all the drug guys. And some people don't like to be lied to. They feel like if you're making fun of me, like all of a sudden they discover. And so we had the gentleman who just rushed and to the whale and start beating it and climbed on it and said, I'm going to burn it. I'm going to bring my friends. But in the whole history, maybe 3 or 4 of those reactions.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the MO Podcast, where we dive deep into the minds of visionaries and pioneers whose big and ambitious projects are reshaping the cultural landscape. I'm your host, Joey Flores, here with my co-host, Jonathan Neal. Today, our guest is Bart Van Peel, co-founder of the Captain Boomer Collective, a group who has been at the forefront of creating immersive and thought-provoking art installations that challenge perceptions and spark dialogue. Since its inception in 2008, the Captain Boomer Collective has been captivating audiences worldwide with their large-scale, site-specific performances and installations. Known for blending elements of theater, visual arts, and social commentary, their work often blurs the lines between reality and fiction, drawing viewers into an experience that's both visually stunning and intellectually stimulating. One of their most renowned projects, The Whale, brought the startlingly realistic sculpture of a sperm whale to urban waterfronts and beaches, sparking conversations about marine conservation and human impact on the environment. Today, we'll be exploring the creative journey behind these incredible installations, the challenges and surprises along the way, and the profound impact they have on both the public and the art world. So without further ado, Bart, welcome to the MO Podcast.
Thanks for having me. It's an honor and a fantastic introduction.
Great. Well, it's easy to make you sound exciting and impressive. These are some really great projects. Bart, rather than just have you tell us all about your background and bio, just dive in and get a little context by asking you, what was the biggest installation piece you ever did as a solo artist prior to starting the Captain Boomer Collective?
I did my first, let's say, intervention in public space was when I was about 25, and we have an art museum here in Antwerp. And what I did was I put 2 cows in front of the museum. There's a little lawn there, and it's this classic museum, with the pillars and with the curls. And I used basically the museum as the frame to frame those 2 cows. And this is what actually later then became, in a different version, the work Pasture with Cows that we toured around with Captain Boomer. But I did that, pretty young. It was 25, 26, and the resonance was immense. I mean, it was all over. I mean, thousands of people came, and it was also media-wise a success. So that was my first. And then out of that, it was already in collaboration with a lot of people, friends. I play in a band. I still play with these guys in a band, but the guys from the band helped me. And so it was a pretty organic thing, and it just made a lot of sense to turn that into a collective. So that's when Captain Boomer Collective was found.
Got it. Are we talking about live cows?
Yeah, real life cows. Yeah, one of our So it's real life cows, you can maybe you can show a picture. But what we've done using that first embryo, let's say, is we tour with that work now with 2 real life cows in a gigantic golden frame that we put in the middle of the city, and people can enter it and sit on it, and basically, as you said, blurs the line between art and reality. We basically have framed a piece of reality, and it's also it's about the meat industry, but it's also about the art history, about trying to renew yourself in the way you portray something.
I've got a logistics question about those projects that I want to ask, and that is, what happens to the cows at night?
Yeah, good question, Jonathan. You dive right into the into the production stuff, which is the hardest stuff about these projects. I mean, so it's always different. What we learned when you work with live animals, first of all, people really check with the looking glass what you're doing with them, and I understand that it's when you use animals in an art project, you should be very meticulous always. I mean, but so we go at great length to take care of animal welfare. And we take them out of the installation at night. Sometimes they're stored in a little shift-made shed that we make. Sometimes they go back to a farm, and we also always work with local farmers. There's a training for the cows to make them at ease with the installation. There's also what I learned is that they're very particular about the individuals, the other individual cows they want to pair up with. So you need to have like a dream team of cows. And but that's yeah, it's always a challenge. And we had situations. We did this project in Paris where yeah, there's also the veterinary stuff, which is very delicate. You know, sometimes there's diseases going around. Sometimes, so you can't. It's a very bad idea to travel around with them across borders. So for different reasons, we work with local farmers. But for example, in Paris, right till the moment that we were on the train to go to Paris, there was still a problem with who would actually provide the cow. So it's all that was really a stress factor. Also for the actors who they act between the cows, so they need to be at ease with these impressive beasts. Yeah, that weigh 600 or 700 kilograms. Yeah.
What was the response that you most often receive from farmers that you approached for this project?
Different approaches. You have we worked, I think, together with in all like we did this project 6 or 7 times. Um, it's always different. Sometimes it was a real dairy farmer. We always go for dairy cows rather than the big meat cows. And you have cows that are actually very used to being cuddled, and you have even cow therapies. So once we had those cows, and it was a dream to work with because they were like little puppies to play with. But also sometimes we have a local breed of cows, like a historical cow, you know, a cow from that region. That was the case in London. And I like it very much that the farmers, they show up. And the farmer, of course, that's the work is also about how do we look at farming and at the countryside and at the cattle industry. It's great to have their voice there because they're sitting also on that frame and they're talking with the audiences, and you get their perspective as well. And I don't know how it is in the US, but in Europe, yeah, there's a very big debate at this moment about the role of cows of farmers in society, and yeah, agriculture is one of the big challenges, of course, that we have to face, and we all know we have to make a shift from the meat industry to a more vegetable diet. So yeah, rather than being dogmatic in this, we are giving we hope to charm people into different perspectives there.
This is so interesting to me. So I've been vegan for 20 years, Bart. So this is a really interesting conversation for me, and I'm curious. You know, I can only imagine in the United States, there would be plenty of farmers who maybe don't want to help this discourse happen. And so I'm quite curious, do you have farmers who are like, no, I don't want to be part of that? Or, are there others who, would rather at least have a voice, they're representing their views? Generally speaking, like, what is the uptake like when you reach out to farmers? I mean, are they, interested in being part of this dialogue, or do you get kind of mixed reactions?
Well, they actually like it. They like what we do because what we do is we kind of, we frame an idyllic piece of living together with animals, like an old-fashioned view or an old-fashioned idyll of what living on a farm and living together with animals should be. And we know that this is not the case anymore. This is not the way, the cattle industry works, but it makes everybody wonder and dream. And at the same time, we question the idyll by making people sit on that frame. We make them accomplice in the idyll, in the idealization of that, and we kind of also show that we mock that as well, because there's a voice in the frame that comes out, and it's you should experience it, but it's kind of, it's a, the typical museum audio guides that you have when you go to a museum, and that you hear, and this intellectual romantic voice talking about the paintings in a bit of a intellectual superior way. This is what we use, like this tone of voice, and then in the frame there is tableaus going on. So the whole experience is about 2 or 3 hours. It's a very meditative Zen thing, but if you want, you can also take a lot of it. And those themes that you're mentioning, like how we're looking at farming, cattle industry, the whole vegan discussion, they are never there in a dogmatic way. You feel them, they're touched upon with humor, the actors wink to it, and the farmers usually, they really like it. I mean, they don't see it as a anti-meat statement or something. You can see it like that, but it's much softer than that. It's less. You could see that the whale is much more activistic in that sense than the pastry with cows installation.
I have a question about the genesis of this project. On this podcast, we're often interested in talking with artists about how they get some of these projects up and off the ground. What are some of the first moves that they had to make in order to realize these large scale, complex projects that involve lots of partners and lots of other stakeholders? So when you were 25 and you mounted this first intervention with the cows and the Antwerp Museum, what came first in terms of getting the project off the ground? Did you approach the museum first and pitch them and administrators there about this idea? Did you have a farmer who was already on board and had a pair of cows who were ready to take their turn on stage as star performers in the middle of Antwerp in front of the museum? What was the series of steps that led to this realization in those first moments?
Yeah, it's very funny you ask. From the first project, you always learn a lot, and I know that I learned. Maybe just jump to one of the big things that I learned was, wow, it's possible. You can do. You can imagine something, and then 3 weeks later it's there, and it's on the cover of newspapers, and that was an incredible boost for a 25-year-old. That gave incredible confidence. So how did we do it? Funny, the ground, so the lawn was owned by the city, and the museum was in front of that lawn. So basically, I approached the museum director I didn't know him, with a pitch text, sent him an email, and he said he called me back, and he was very sympathetic. He said, "Look, I love the idea." There was also at that time a exposition about women in art, so there was a kind of there was a kind of relevance for him as well, but he could also see the media potential. But he said, "Look, I like the idea, I like you, but it's not my ground." And for him, I kind of think that was the end of the discussion. And then I went to the city and I say, the museum wants me to do it. So I kind of bluffed there. And I said, look, they want me to do it. They just need you to say yes. And then they said, oh, if the museum says it's okay, then it's okay for us too. So it's kind of, you need to bluff. And what I learned, because permissions is a big one in what we do, because it's usually in public space, on beaches, or even in the middle of the city. And permission is quite often where it breaks down. And I remember when we did the whale in London, we worked for about 2 years with a festival to get all permissions, the Harbour Authority, the police, all of them, for basically a pretty simple installation. But we wanted to do it on the Thames River shore, so you had also hygiene issues, etc. And in Spain, we did it. And the partner there arranged it in about 2 months. And I remember I was on that beach and I said to the partner, I said, how did you do that? In 2 months, you got the permission from all these authorities. And the woman said something to me that I'll never forget. She said, mejor pedir perdón que pedir permiso, which means in Spanish, better say sorry than ask for permission. And it's it's a street artist rule, I think. If you just do something, and you get away with it, that's sometimes the best approach. Nowadays, I mean, the cities we work with, they have to go to that permission process, but I like very much that rock and roll vibe. Yeah.
We talk to a lot of people because on this podcast we also talk to entrepreneurs who are building solutions in the art and cultural sector, and so far two of them have been two-sided marketplaces, and we often talk about how to solve the chicken and egg problem, and it's kind of like what you were experiencing here, right? Like the museum says, oh, I can't really give you permission to do this, and then the city, probably on their own wouldn't be able to also give permission. And I think that this is a really great strategy, and I've used it myself in the past when building two-sided marketplaces, that you essentially just get confirmation from if I can make this happen, is it okay? And then go get the other side of the market. So, I think that's like a really good lesson for people who want to get these complex things done with multiple stakeholders is fake it till you make it, essentially.
Yeah, correct. That's a good sum up.
Bart, this is I didn't really think about this question until we were having this conversation about the cows, but you're using these animals to create a discourse around animal welfare and other issues. What's your opinion of Damien Hirst's works, like the shark and Mother and Child Divided? Like what do you think about using animals in that way?
You mean the shark that he cut in half?
The stuff, the $12 million stuffed shark, and then Mother and Child Divided is actually a baby cow and a mother cow encased in glass and probably formaldehyde and whatever. I'm just curious your thoughts about using animals for art in a way that I don't think is maybe it creates discourse, but not the kind of discourse that you're creating.
Yeah, well, I can only say that Damien Hirst is not someone that I am drawn to as a person. I know that a lot of people see in him this great critique on capitalism, and by doing it, kind of by blowing it up, making it, deflating it or something. I don't know what they see in it. But to me, I know works like the skull with all the diamonds, I don't really see a lot of beauty in that particular artist, but it's personal. If you talk about using dead animals in art installations, I think that's what you're referring to. The thing is that they're treated so horribly in the whole industry, and when you do a project with live animals, or with any animal, even a dead one, in an art project, people become very, they become sentimental, sentimental or very meticulous, and they really check you out. And I think that's a good thing. I mean, it's a good thing. I had first it got on my nerves, but then I thought, no, this is actually what we do. Kind of we sometimes we lead the way, and so in this little bubble that we create, it should be ideal. So I'm all for being very careful about that and treating animals with respect. Dead or alive. I mean, that's
It's also, you never know what the future is going to hold. This conversation put me in mind of this famous case in the United States. I don't know if you ran across it, Bart, but there was a painting by the artist Robert Rauschenberg called Canyon, which was made, I think, in the late 1950s, and included a taxidermied golden eagle in the aggregation of the work, and is widely regarded as a sort of a very important work by Rauschenberg, and it was owned by his longtime gallerist and friend Elena Sonnabend. When she passed away, the IRS valued the work at something like $65 million, which then meant that the heirs had to pay taxes on the value of that work to the tune of something like $25 million. But because of the protected status of the eagle at that point, it made it illegal for them to sell the work and to try and gain the proceeds from that IRS valuation, which meant that the work's value was effectively zero because it was illegal to sell, even though the IRS was saying that its equivalent value was something like $65 million. So the heirs had no choice but to simply donate it to the Museum of Modern Art, which now holds it in perpetuity. But it's an interesting challenge that you run up against because you never know what future regulations, future laws, future tax regimes might hold for you if you are dealing in otherwise tricky materials, put it that way.
Yeah, interesting story.
Bart, so we call this the MO podcast, and we were vague about what it means because there's a lot of different MO phrases we like to pull out here, and we do have a magnum opus section where we talk about perhaps the most important work that the artist has created, or at least the big project that's the focal point of what we're talking about here. Would you agree that the whale is your biggest and most important piece to date?
It is certainly in terms of global resonance of the project. I mean, it was the reaction that it provoked was very strong, and I really like what it did, both emotionally and intellectually. So I agree that it's also one of our longest running works, and I still very much believe in it with the whole team.
Yeah. Well, so I guess that makes me wonder how many times it's been installed. But what I wanted to ask was, talk about the research involved leading up to the creation of the whale. Have you ever seen a beached whale in real life? Was that something that you needed to do in order to feel comfortable with this, or was it going and seeing fake whales in museums? Like, what was your research like in order to create this life-size replica?
Yeah, so I'm living about an hour from the coast, Belgian coast. And when I was every year or every 2 years, it happens that a big sea mammal beaches at the Belgian shore, and it's 1 hour away from me. A sperm whale is an extremely rare event. I mean, it's maybe once every 10 years, every 15 years that this happens. And so I've been always waiting. I'm ready. I'm ready to go. When I was in my teens, in my 20s, I was like on a kind of alert mode because I wanted to see it. And I never actually made it there. I never made it on time. So the event itself is such a it's something that breaks the status quo of a city. I mean, all of a sudden there is this giant coming out of another element. It's dead, so it's dying. It throws itself at basically at your feet, and says, "I can't anymore." There's this tragedy in this, but also this exhilaration of meeting that giant, and that thing from another world. And to me, sperm whales are the most mysterious creatures that you can imagine. If you see where they live, if you they're just learning about them, how complex they are in communication. You have also culturally the whole line, Moby Dick and going back. It's also interesting what happened. Even in the 14th century, there were beachings because they've always had beachings of whales, and how people saw that sometimes as an omen or as a sign or as a sometimes good or sometimes bad. But so there is this thing that brings a whole community together and makes them question everything. And at a certain moment, I had the idea, okay, let's just recreate that in every possible detail, and we go at great length to do it. So the research was together with a team of sculptors and with a few scientists. Okay, how we're going to recreate that in the most detail. I mean, we're going to recreate the smell. We had from an actual beached whale, there was a casting of the jaw, for example. There were a few elements that were cast, so we could mold and actually use them. And then also, watching a lot of videos. There's a lot of variety in how they look. And then we build it, and altogether we've built three different whales now with different teams, and we're still learning about them. That's great. I mean, every beaching there is new facts. Sometimes we work also together with marine biologists of that region, and we ask them to join us and to in the intervention and play along with us. And they quite often do because they see the value educationally and also in terms of promotion for their organization. It's a thin line because, of course, they have to play along in the fiction, but it worked out a few times really wonderfully. It depends on personal skills. I mean, on the personality of the scientist. So it's going on already a long time. I call it a never-ending tour, but we always stay quiet for a year or so. We go back underground, and then we resurface in a city, and we never do it, one city after the other. And the fun thing is that media attention is something that media forgets very quickly, and we can renew that thing. And it's a fantastic way to bring people together and start bring them a roller coaster of emotions. That's what happens. The fact that you don't know whether it's true or not, that you have conflicting authorities. What I mean is, maybe you've read something on the news, but you see a scientist, you have a smell, you have the beach, you have the awe of the emotion of the moment. So quite often people switch a few times, like, oh, it's true, oh, it's not true. And then their emotions shift. And that's, to me, the very interesting artistic part, is that, they're shocked or they're in awe, and then they find out it's not real, and they're relieved, maybe, or maybe they're angry that they're being messed with, or maybe they think it's funny, and then they start to doubt again, and then they start to talk with a neighbor who feeds the illusion or who contradicts them. They talk to our scientists, so it's a whole journey, and it's important to do it in the right conditions, on a public spot that's freely available, and with the right partner. That's what I've learned. It's very important to have the same intentions as the partner. I'm very happy with that project. It brought me to a lot of places, and I met a lot of like-minded people. What I mean with like-minded is people who agree that the thing that we need to put on the agenda now is climate change. This is the first thing. I mean, this is the thing that needs to get attention. I mean, the other biodiversity things, microplastics as well. I mean, but we can't talk enough about it, and it's difficult to talk about because it's abstract. It's abstract, and it's scientific, and it's complex, and so. We have a great conversation starter in that beached whale.
So I want to get more into that question about art and its role in raising awareness or combating or dealing with the challenge of climate change. But just for some of our listeners who may not be fully aware of what this project entails, of course, you could go to the website captainboomercollective.org to read up on it. But Bart, if you were confronting someone brand new who didn't know anything about this, could you provide just a brief description of what the Whale Project actually is and entails, to connect up the thoughtful descriptions that you just provided to sort of what it is really concrete on the ground?
Okay, sure. So you have a city or a village, but let's say a city at the waterfront, at a river, or at a sea. In the middle of the night at 3:00, we arrive with a big truck, and we install just right next to the water a hyperreal statue of a beached whale that looks like it's just beached and it's dead. It's 50 meters long. It's enormous. It's the size of a young adult sperm whale. We make it smell. We put a fence around it, as is the habit with beached whales. We put on uniforms of scientists, I mean protective suits, and we basically start investigating it. And the city wakes up at 6, 7 in the morning, and the first joggers are there, and they come and they rush to the scene, and they ask, "What is this?" And we are busy examining it and taking the first measurements and also some precautions that it is taken back to the river, or we sometimes, like in Paris, we pulled it out because it's on the sand bank. So there's always different stories. And basically, when they ask what is it, we say, yes, it's a sperm whale. We just found it. We're still examining. We don't know why it's there. It's very rare in these waters. and we just drop a few stories, and then we go back to the job. And so you create different storylines, and day 2 and day 3 of the beaching, they become sometimes more absurd or more mythical, let's say. But also, it's so we. But in the beginning, it's very hyper real, and then the press comes, and the press asks questions, and bloggers come, and more people come, and the whole dynamic of a whale beaching is recreated in that city with an important extra dimension, meaning it's fake. Yeah, it's fake. So why is it fake? Why do they do that? Why did they fake that? Is this just a practical joke, or is something behind it? And so people start to wonder. We don't give any answers. We're just within that fence, the theatrical arena. It's a true fact. So if you want to be an actor in Captain Boomer, you have to stay in role and just be the scientist at all time. Usually we stay for 2 or 3 days in a city, and then we hide the statue again. And we drive up, and we keep a low profile for about half a year or a year, and then we resurface.
And at what point during these interventions would you say does the public or the press begin to get the idea of it being a staged piece of theater and not a let's call it a real whale, right? It's a real event, but at what point do they begin to make the shift from credulity, believing in this thing having been an actual whale, to figuring out that it's fake?
Yeah, it's different for everyone. And there's 2 things. I mean, there's the press. Let me talk about that later. But on the ground, the audience on the ground that just, come and see it. The surprising thing is that if we do it well, even the 2nd or the 3rd day, when it's been all over the media that this is a art installation and these are the reasons why they do it and those are the partners, etc., that you can still shift their mind, even if it's for for 10 minutes or something. So you can still play that, and that's one of the fascinating finds. How does authority work? Press is authority, but the uniform is authority as well. Your own senses is authority as well, and an actual person talking to you and saying, look, this is a sample, we just pulled it out and we think it has this percentage of microplastics. So it's also believable. So what we see is that we can still, even on the 3rd day, even in a place where it's very unlikely, like in the middle of Paris, you can still have that effect on people. The press usually, being the press and being proud of fact checking, etc., usually they give it away maybe in the first after 3 or 4 hours. Sometimes with press it's interesting. Sometimes we manage to together with the local partner have a kind of scoop for them and have a kind of deal. If they play along with us for 2 or 3 or 4 hours on their site, they get a scoop, meaning that, for example, they can be a part of the installation or something. And for example, in Paris, that was incredible. Le Parisien, so the newspaper Le Parisien, they did that, and I love that so much. If you go if you just take the risk as a journalist or even as a newspaper, say we like this, it's fun, it's an artistic, practical joke. The reasons behind it are good. Let's just go with that for a few hours. And then the other press, they were furious about them, and I love that. Let's stir it up a little bit, and let's not take it all so seriously. In the end, it's a statue when we pretend. But yeah.
What is the craziest reaction you've ever gotten doing one of these?
Well, crazy aggression is crazy. So we had some aggression. Aggression is when usually it's you do it on the street, so there's all kind of people. I mean, also the crazy ones, all the mentally unstable ones, all the drug guys, they're also there. So and some people don't like to be lied to. They don't like it. They feel like if you're making fun of me, like all of a sudden they discover. And so we had the gentleman who just rushed and to the whale and start beating it and climbed on it and said, I'm going to burn it. I'm going to bring my friends. And so we step aside yeah. So a few reactions of aggression, very few. I mean, very few. But in the whole history, maybe 3 or 4 of those reactions. And then what we also notice that some people, they react so emotionally that we take care of that we isolate them and we talk to them. We kind of let them in on what we're doing. As I said, I mean, it's on the street, so everyone's there, and some people are overwhelmed by it. So we see sadness, we see joy. I mean, there's a lot of humor going on, but also, what you see is that people have a real emotional connection to what's going on. I mean, what I mean is the whole ecological crisis that we're in. People really have strong feelings about it, and it gives them an opportunity to voice them as well. So you have the sadness of, I believe it's a real whale, and I'm sad of that. And the other thing is that, that those feelings about helplessness about what we're going to do with this crisis, which is so acute and which is not being addressed as it should be. So a lot of different emotions, but that's how it should be. So
yeah, I can only. I have an 8-year-old nephew, and I can only imagine that if we were taking him to the beach one day and your installation was there, you would pretty much ruin our whole day.
Yeah, kids are great. Yeah. There's so many questions, but kids keep asking questions, and that's a great thing about the kids, because you can talk about the ecological message, etc. But it's on a much more basic level. It is just appealing to your emotions. You have this dead, mysterious giant with enormous teeth coming out of another element, and all the other things are secondary reflections, but children have that immediate emotion, and they just want to know about these creatures. So we keep on telling them, how incredible they are, how deep they go, what they eat, how they communicate. They just found out that they have an incredible complex communication system with even different languages, if they check those clicks. So you can just keep on talking to them, and the children, they keep on asking questions. Yeah.
One of the biggest challenges, I think, facing the discourse around the climate crisis and the various different ecological challenges that we face comes down to what is real and what is believable, and how do we know what we know. And we've seen a lot of the strategies of organizations and people and activists who are, let's say, opposed to a certain approach to climate change, using the using strategies of confusion or of questioning truth claims, questioning scientific claims, trying to delegitimize the otherwise sort of truth-seeking activities of most climate scientists and others involved in the field. I mean, these have become sort of well-known strategies within a certain activist sector of the political spectrum, let's say. And it's interesting to me that other artists, other collectives who approach questions of climate change do so from a standpoint of sort of earnestness and of an attempt to try and, let's say, reveal or make the truth of the matter more salient, more clear, more real. Your approach is very different. I mean, it makes it salient, it makes it real, but it also takes the, let's say, epistemic challenge or the question of truth and falsity as a kind of given. And I'm curious, how has that been received by both people within the sort of dedicated climate change activist community, as well as people who would maybe opposed to climate change as a serious political and social challenge that we face? Have you been adopted by, let's say, the the climate change denialists as a exemplar of the falsities that they believe are being promulgated by the IPCC and other climate scientists? And then have you been challenged by the similar climate activists who see what you're doing as somehow hurting their cause?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, interesting point. So we had criticism. I mean, we had criticism from different parties. I mean, both on the right and on the left. Usually on the right, let's say. What I like a lot about the facts debate, the facts debate when you talk about climate change, that took us so long, the whether climate change is real or not. I mean, hopefully, there's still not a consensus in the US. So I like the fact that we are putting something there, and the big question is it real or not? And I want people to find out. I mean, I want people in the end to find out that this is not real. It's not, the idea is not just to confuse and then just let them, I want it, and then also wonder, why did I think it was real? Why did I think it was real? And question their assumptions, their way of critical thinking, and just see the see the humor of it. So I like that parallel. Yeah, the second part of your question, have we? So we got compliments from people like Greenpeace, who like what we do. I mean, that was I like that a lot. And we also, we were asked a few times by NGOs, can you come and do it together with us? So I think they see what we do. They see that I see it as using very, if you have such a cause, you can use, you're at liberty to use a little bit more brutal strategies, I think. So the point that you're making, that the right wing says, look, it's fake, so everything is fake, that's a reaction that I haven't seen a lot. Maybe.
Well, that's amazing.
Probably.
If you did this on the coast of California or somewhere in the United States, I fully suspect that would be adopted by at least some crazy blogosphere type, very online people, to publish articles that say, beached whale is another strategy by the radical left-wing climate activists to convince people about the reality of climate change, but it's all fake.
Yeah. Well, probably you would have, such a reaction there. Yeah, I can imagine. It's the funny thing is, I mean, you talk about the blogs, but we do it in a public space, and just people from all left wing, they come together. And what I like a lot is that they start addressing each other. So people start to talk with the neighbor and say, what is this? Do you know what it is? And so there's all these stories starting to circulate, and hopefully also some debates. I mean, I had them. And so I like that a lot, because one of the problems with internet is, of course, it can help polarization, because of it's, if you're just online and you can blog, I mean, it becomes more extreme. So the face-to-face of the interaction, I hope, makes people listen more to each other, and kind of, the extremes are softened. I hope that happens in around our installation.
What obviously, this is just an incredible way to start a conversation and discourse. I'm curious, like, what's something that has come out of this, either a reaction or a little bit of a movement that you're particularly proud of? Like, what's something that's come out of this discourse or out of this project that you just you look at and point at and say, like, we didn't know that would happen, but this is exactly the kind of thing that
a few reactions were gave me goosebumps. I like. Could be from little kids saying, I want to be what these guys are doing. I want to be a marine biologist. That's nice. And then we had one, I mean, the beaching in Paris was so, in terms of getting the attention of a city, I've never seen it, how much it resonated. And we were on the subway, and there was one of these people in Paris subways. They just give I love that, by the way, as a tradition. They give a speech in the subway about how poor they are and why you need to help them. And say afterward they go around with the little with the hat. And he passed us. We were not in uniform. We were not, but we're just. It was the end of the thing, and he said, "Wow, a lot of people are giving so much. Maybe it's the whale that's been beached, you know." So this homeless person or homeless or said something like that, you know. So you could see him. Wow, it's alive in the city. And he said, I mean, I don't know why he said it, but it gives a feeling like we kind of softened something here, or there was a big collective joke that lightened things up, and at the same time put something serious on the agenda. So that was nice. I mean, and reactions of individual people. A movement. I mean, there's so many great movements, so many great activists. I don't see yourself as we are not activists, because activist means that you have an activist. To me is a marketeer who tries to do a specific thing, and they're very necessary. But to us, we want to keep, you know, you can feel whatever you want around our installation, and that yeah, that's important to me. That don't frame it to one particular issue. Let people raise the issues themselves.
So I have to ask this question: how is the whale funded?
Well, it's a very good question, and it's what I spent, to be honest, a lot of my time is looking for funding, and a lot of our time. I mean, we're with a team, but it's because so in Europe, we have the luck now. Okay, you have the beginning of the funding, which is very hard because you don't have it yet, and you have to make people believe in the idea. I can talk about that, but now in Europe, there is great street art festivals. I mean, art festivals that are funded usually by the city, and their job is to make the city alive in summer, or and so they do big events in public space. Usually have a music program, and also yeah, they invite collectives like us, companies like us, to do something in their city. So this is what our business model is at the moment. In Europe, you also can get some funding from government, but it's a very long process, and we are not good at that. But we yeah, yeah, a lot now the funding comes from festivals, who see city festivals, who see the value in what we do. And the thing is, of course, there's no marketing around the whale. So for them, I mean, they can't put a big flag, it's this festival or whatever. So it's only in the second line and afterwards with social media that they can claim it. So I'm very thankful for people who go along with that vision. And those street art festivals in France, you have a big tradition. In the UK, you have a tradition. We worked in the UK with a festival, GDIF, that came out of the London Olympics. You know, that vibe with, you know, bringing people together. It was the first big Paralympics as well. And so they saw, I mean, the people who organized those things, they saw, okay, we need to do more things that are inclusive, that are on the streets. And they started festivals like the GDIF festival, that allowed us to beach in the Thames River.
Bart, you talked about the difference between fundraising for this project now that it has been done before, and the difference between that and trying to get funding for it the first time. So what was the process like, and the experience like getting funding for it the first time?
So I think the model is called economically participation. Of course, when I had the idea, I approached all the big art institutions and partners and festivals, but I was a nobody, so they just, you know, they didn't get email me back. And then I was lucky; I got one museum, little museum, it was a museum about fishing in the sea. So it was in a little village in Holland. And that guy, I mean, he saw the vision, and he invested in us. So for about half a year or a year, I kind of called, you know, out of the blue, people that I didn't know. And then one of them, one hook, you know, hell, and there was so I went there, and I got some first funding. And then the sculptor, he was also Zephyr, great, fantastic man, Dirk Klaassen. He said, okay, he made hyperreal elephants. He said, look, I'm going to help you. I love the idea. So he took on some of the risk. And then the collective, the people, they just invested their time. Everybody worked for free to make this done. And I think this is something that you have to recognize. And also later, I mean, we're a collective. We started it as a collective. I had the idea and I brought people together. But so participation is a big model, is a big thing. I really believe in that. I mean, when you start a band, this is the way to do it, I think, to just get going. The difficulty with participation, I think, because I've done I made also like documentary films and other. When you start a new thing, when it's an interesting new thing, probably there's no funding for it yet. So the difficulty, of course, is to make. Yeah, you don't know where it's going to end up. So if you want to but on the other side, you want to give people some kind of acknowledgement or percentage or something. So it's always, I learned to have the strong discussions at the beginning rather at the end. I learned a lot there. That's how the Whale Project was done. And now when I do new projects, I try to get a coalition of festivals to invest a little bit. But I'm not rich yet. I'm not rich at all. So no.
You mentioned that you've had to create 3 of these replicas. So I have a 3-part question. One, is the reason for that because they have a life cycle and, the first one's no longer usable? Or is it a matter of it's better to build one in the new location than to try to ship this massive thing from one location to another? What was the cost to create the first one versus the cost to create the third one? And then last question, have you ever considered beaching more than one whale in the same locale for perhaps a slightly different impact?
Yeah, so a lot changed, techniques changed. And maybe let me first get into the reason why we reproduced a new one recently. For example, we made the mistake of it not being able to fit in a container, and so it was 50 meters long, but it couldn't fit in a container; it was too wide, and so it was a big mistake because we got a fantastic partnership with Adelaide Festival. I know the artistic director there, Ruth McKenzie, and she said, "Oh, let's do it in Adelaide. It's never been done in Australia." And we looked into special shipping, and it was just a crazy amount of money and time and risk as well. And so then we decided to build a new one with a local Australian studio. So we went there. I mean, we go all. I mean, it's a whole collaborative process. We go through the paint process, to the 3D process. And now we have one, it's very important, that fits in a container, in different pieces, but in one container. And this is finally allows us to break out of Europe. And the cost to build such a creature, depending on how, I mean, it's difficult to say, but it's between 100 and 200,000 euro, depending on how you do it, which things you use, etc. So it's a big number that you need to raise.
And have you would there be any value in, or do you see any value in beaching 2 whales and trying to make this seem like an even crazier issue that people would respond to?
What we've done, you can do it. I mean, just the logistic costs go up a lot, and so you could do that. What we sometimes do is we have a second whale. When we have a possibility, we have a little boat, research vessel, on the river, and it has also the logo of the IWA, the International Whale Association, which is our fictitious, with a great logo, research organization. And so they are actually on the river, and they found the other one. Right, there's another one stuck in the river, and so all the attention of the people all of a sudden goes to the river where the ship is, and they are taking these measurements, and they're doing something on the water. And I like that that scene that happens, that everybody's just looking at this little ship, and we create by saying and by having walkie-talkie that second whale that is still alive. To beach 2 or 3 of them, well, it's true that Joey, that they beach sometimes in mass. That happens, sometimes 2 or 3. Usually it's the young with sperm whales, is the young adult males that get into trouble quite often. Yeah. Or the very old males as well. At the end of their lifespan, they get into the shallow waters and they get into trouble. But we've never done two together, no.
What's the biggest problem that has happened on the ground? You get there at 3 o'clock at night. I'm imagining you've got to set up lighting and different things while also not making it clear to anybody who might be out at the beach that late that this is what's happening. What's the biggest thing that's gone wrong in the process of installing the whale?
Well, we paid a lot of learning money there. So the hardest was probably the very first beaching, where we had a very sophisticated idea. We're going to put it on wheels, right? So we had a system that you put wheels to the side, and then you could roll it on the beach. And we had an idea. We have a Jeep. We'll pull it with a Jeep to the location where it needs to be. And it was a storm that night, or well, stormy conditions, and we fought with the animal for, I don't know, hours and hours. I think maybe we started at 2 o'clock at night, and at 8 o'clock at night, it was at the location, really pushing it by manpower. And you know how wheels get stuck in the sand, etc. So it was a good epic start to, for the legend, let's say. And then we learned to use the right equipment, the right bulldozers that have the good things on the beach. Permissions is a big one. We have a lot of my project, because I'm talking about the project that worked, but for every project that worked, there's 2 or 3 that failed. I think 2 that failed, sometimes with a lot of time invested in them and money as well. And permissions is a really hard one, because it's enough that one person in the city raises an objection, and in the end he can always say, you see, I was right, when something backfires or something. So it takes some courage to do it. And I had also with other projects, you have the money thing, and then the permissions thing is a big spoiler.
What is that process like? Well, let's combine that with another question I have, which is sort of, to any other artists who, have ambitious ideas like this, which, would involve installation and perhaps like city property or something like that. What is that process like, and what's your advice to, other artists who might want to attempt something this difficult, and both, controversial and trying to get something like this installed in a public place? What's your advice to them?
Well, classic advice: don't give up. And I recognize something in myself, which I call the idiot phase, which is that you are an idiot trying this, and you feel that it's an actual feeling, like, oh, who am I kidding? This idiot feeling that the first times you pick up the phone and you're going to talk to an official, or you'll be sending these emails with a vague concept. You're bluffing a lot, and sometimes you're really spending time and money and on an idea, and sometimes you were an idiot, right? After a year, you look back and you say, look, this nothing happened, and I was an idiot. And so but to go through that idiot phase, and to kind of be there together with the idiot and support him, and giving a tap on the shoulder and say, come on, guy. I think that's an important an important thing, because that's when you want to pull out. And the longer you can sustain that or try that, the more chance you have that one day you will get lucky. And then the good thing is, it gets easier, because once you've done things, people start to believe you. And now I came to an interesting phase in life where I can say a totally crazy idea, and people will listen, which is also dangerous, So that's But don't give up, and you can do things in public space without asking. You can just do a lot of things, and generally people will warm to you if it's something that works well. They will welcome it.
Would you, rolling off of that comment, would you consider beaching the whale without permission at this point?
Yeah, you risk to lose it. You risk confiscation, but we've done it with semi approval. Quite often you have 3 or 4 layers of power, the city, this council, the local council, and sometimes you just, when you have one of those, when you informed one of those, or you can sometimes get around it a little bit. But as I say, as you grow up, the rules become more, yeah, you just follow the rules. But yeah, it's not only about rules. For example, we build another installation that we've built is a kind of enormous periscope where people are inside, and it's we call it a shaft, and it's a visual illusion taking people into hell. Now, I don't want to go into too many details, but you're building an installation where people are inside, uh, quite high, and there is all these regulations about when you build an installation for people, and they come from the fun park industry. There's like, if you're gonna follow those to the detail, yeah, it's endless. So we used common sense there and say, look, this is safe. This is reasonably safe. I mean, people, you can still fall, and you could, but give yourself a little bit of slack there. Yeah. And there is risk. I mean, you have risks, actual risk. If somebody sues you're fucked. Yeah.
Bart, is this your favorite work that you've ever been involved in, or do you have another?
You mean doing Captain Boomer? I love it. I sometimes feel that a lot of energy goes to the organizational part and to the money raising part. I would love to spend more time writing, which was my first passion. But yeah, I absolutely love it. And at the moment, I'm doing another older passion of mine. I'm making a new documentary film. So I made one documentary film 10 years ago, and I'm going to make a new one, and it's very fun to be in another medium.
Jonathan, did you have any other questions about this project or the practice before we move into the more opinion segment?
No, let's move into the more opinion segment.
Awesome. So Bart, again, MO podcast. One of the MOs is more opinions, and so this tends to be the only question we sort of warn our guests about, so we don't blindside them. And this is actually how we learned about your project from one of our other interviews. One of the guests said that a project that they were super excited about in the space was yours. So we call this the major ovation. What's a person or project in the creative field or cultural sector that you really admire, and why?
Well, I had to think about a French artist called Olivier Grostet, and we came across him in different festivals in France. We were at the same festivals, and what he does is build a ville éphémère, so a temporal city. And he does it with cardboard boxes together with the local population. He will build, it could be a bridge, or a part of the city hall that was never finished. And this is an enormous structure in cardboard, scotched together, built on a day or on 2 days. And I love that fact. Okay, let's build something with the community, and let's just actually change the city here and now. And yeah, to build something together with people just creates an incredible connection. And yeah, I love big things, so I love seeing the results. So I never spoke to the guy, so there's no personal favor that I'm doing him here, but I really love that kind of work.
What do you happen to know if they roll into that project with like a blueprint and then they're sort of managing the community and I mean, like do you have any understanding of the logistics behind what how that happens?
Yeah, I think there is a plan. There is a plan. What I understand is that quite often the ideas for what needs to be built also are scouted in the community. Like maybe there is, a building that was torn down, or maybe there is, and also architecturally, they're interesting structures. I mean, it's just not. It's quite often it's complex with arches and with. And so then I think he makes indeed a plan, and then they arrive with a lot of cardboard, but of course the boxes are not folded yet, so they're flat. So you can use you can create an enormous volume with relatively little material. And then they build it together with the people, and I think at the end they also let it fall down. So it's like people need to fold it, they need to they need to hold it, and it's this organic happening. I like the word happening a lot. I think that's what we're also doing. It's a 1970s word, but it has something lightness to it that I think the art world sometimes lost, taking itself very seriously. That let's just build something. It's very childlike. And it's in the end it's standing there, and then I think they just push it. He also did some things where with balloons they let it float in the air. So it's making a city dream, and it has this community aspect to it that and in the public space that I think is so valuable.
Amazing. It kind of reminds me of Burning Man, to be honest, where they build like these fantastical structures and installations, and then at the end of the week, many of them get burned to the ground. And sometimes you're just standing amongst these things, just thinking about the god awful amount of planning and work and materials that went into it. And I just think I don't know that I have the what's the word the ability to create something so beautiful and then just light it on fire.
Yeah, that's that I love that. I mean, I love that. I mean, also yeah, like saying, okay, look, it's a temporary thing, and that this moment is what is important. That's that's very beautiful. I mean, it's putting the moment and the community first, and also destruction is just a fascinating thing. I mean, whether it's by fire or by pushing a building over, or there's a lot of renewal in destruction, as you will know.
Okay, so the next question in our more opinion segment is, Bart, if you had $10 million budget for a project, what would you make? What would you do with it?
Oh, was that? I didn't know I had to prepare that. But maybe before we start, I think the fact that you need to raise money for a project is also, I think, sometimes interesting, because it gives you a reality check and it makes you go through, knowing people and finding out. I've actually had the luck of meeting people who have that kind of money, and sometimes they don't know whether their ideas are good because they just start doing them without that checkup. But I don't want to avoid the question. So $10 million is fantastic. If you look at the city festivals, what they do sometimes, like the city of Rennes, for example, in France, is a city of I don't know how much. I think it's about 500,000 people, and there is a festival there, Tombée de la Nuit, who does these kind of projects, all the time. And if you see the impact that they have on the city, by doing a lot of these projects and by making that a city identity, I think that's an incredible impact. So that's one of the things that I think I could do, is instead of spending it all on my own ideas, just like start curating and inviting people that I think could do great things. Then also, I mean, there's a few other projects that take time that I'm still working on, and that takes years to get funded, and then just fund them right away. Sure, I would do that.
What would be your ideal city to mount such a festival in?
Well, my own city is the city of Antwerp. We have a similar festival, Zomer van Antwerp Festival. They did a great job. Yeah, a city of 500,000 people is you can really have an impact and bring everyone almost together, or makes everyone. You can, if it gets bigger, we were lucky with for example, Paris, that there was the one time, but to get to really So let me just be chauvinistic, as we say, and just pour it all in my own city, Antwerp. But what you quite often see is that when the city changes power, when there is a right-wing mayor all of a sudden, that those festivals are under pressure. You quite often see that it's direct because they just lose funding. The permissions become much harder. And so almost all of the cities where we have done things were with left-wing rulers, where probably the right-wing cities need it most, right? Those are the cities where you need more social connections, where where trust has been affected, where so this is where you can make yeah. So it's it's an interesting paradox.
All right, Bart, we've got one last question for you in the more opinion segment. It's usually a pretty fun one. If you could steal any work of art from anywhere in the world and have it for yourself and your own personal collection, which work of art would you like to have?
Steal it. Okay. I'd probably just I could choose anyone, anything. Yeah. Probably I'll take a truck and go to Florence and just steal the David of Michelangelo. Put it on my truck and just put it in. Yeah, I'm getting older, and I think if I get him to look at, it's fantastic, fantastic work of art that just gives such confidence to humanity. I think that's it, right? As you see this guy standing there, this David, and it's just something about him in his posture, in his look, in his bravado that that just appealed to me when I was 17, went to Florence first time, and so if I can choose any work, probably that one. It's I know it's kitsch, right? A lot of people see it as kitsch. It's everywhere, but that's just what happens with great art. That everybody makes their own replica and it goes around. But I will have the original. So yeah.
Right. It's not kitsch if it's not a reproduction.
Yeah.
I'm actually I got to go see it in 2019, and I'm actually my family's taking our first ever sort of big out of the country vacation together in about a week and a half, and we're going to go to Florence and go see the statue of David, of course.
Yeah, it's a true miracle. So it's almost like a pilgrimage. You need to go and see it once in a while, like every 10 years.
Yeah, do me a favor and don't steal it until after the 15th of July.
Okay, you're going. Yeah. So you're actually going to Europe, Joey.
Yeah, my family. I grew up in California, but my dad's family lives in the middle of the country, and so every vacation we ever took as a family was to go back home to visit my grandmother and my dad's side of the family. So we've never taken a family vacation. And 4 years ago, when I got back from Europe, I said, I just had the experience of a lifetime, and I think we should go as a family. So we opened a little account and started putting a little money in every month. And 4 years has flown by, and it's time to go. And in 9 days, we leave, and we'll be there for 18 or 19 days.
Yeah, fantastic.
Well, Bart, this is super fascinating. When we started this podcast, we didn't just want to interview artists about their studio practices. We wanted to focus on projects of great ambition. This is just, every one of our interviews has been wildly different because it's so focused on a project that's so unique, and the whale is certainly that. So thank you for coming on the show and sharing your story with us.
Yeah, sure. It was a real pleasure and an honor. I mean, also to be able to talk a little bit longer about these things is really nice. Usually it's real snaps in the media, so it's I enjoyed it a lot. Bye.